Hi. We're going to start chapter 12 today. There will be no class on Friday. You will have an exam on chapters 9 through 12. Does anyone have any questions before we begin? I do. Caitlin, what are you eating?
Pizza goldfish.
Nice.
Oh, so good.
Those are good. Yeah. Sometimes it can get a little picey, get a little extra seasoning sometimes. All right. Yeah, right. So emotional and social development in adolescence. So any of you that have teenagers, which I don't know that any of you do, are old enough. Wait, Nicole's got a daughter.
I do. I have a
Yeah.
stepdaughter and my own child, so they're both teenagers in 11th grade, and I don't know how I'm still surviving.
I don't either. But this is a lot of this stuff's gonna ring true to you. It did.
And they're both in quarantine right now too, so that's been fun.
Yeah, my 15-year-old is because we'll leave it at that. All right. Eric Erickson said that we go through 8 stages of psychosocial emotional development. Now we're at the stage of identity versus role confusion. He said that during adolescence, we're trying to figure out who the heck we are, right? So, identity itself is where we finally identify or define who we are, what we value, and what direction we're going in life. And this is key. It's a process of exploration followed by commitment to a thing, to ideals, to a vocation, to relationships, our sexual orientation, our ethnic group, versus if you don't go through this well, appropriately, you'll develop what's called role confusion. And that's partly due to earlier psychosocial conflicts not being resolved. You lack direction, self definition. You decide that society restricts your choices. And ultimately, he said, you may be underprepared for the challenges of adulthood. We see in adolescence changes in our self concept. We start to kind of connect or unify separate traits into more abstract descriptors. Like we used to say we were smart or or curious. Now we will just say I'm intelligent, which includes smart and curious. You may describe yourself with contradictory traits. I'm introverted, but I'm also extroverted. Depends on the context. We'll put greater emphasis on social virtues, right? Like being friendly, being considerate. We see some changes in our self esteem. We continue to add new dimensions to our self esteem based on our close friendships, our romantic appeal, and our competence to perform a job. Our self esteem generally rises, but as we discussed earlier, when we transition from like elementary to middle school and middle school to high school, it begins to drop until we start to master what is expected of us. You go from elementary to middle, it's when you first start using a locker, maybe, you know, and you're like, I don't understand this homeroom stuff. What's happening here? Right? Until you start to master the routine. Okay. Throughout this chapter, we're going to see that parenting and parenting styles, as well as teacher encouragement, will have an impact on our self esteem. So we have 4 primary identity statuses. What's his name? Erickson said, look, it's all about exploration and then finally committing to something. So if you are high in exploration and then you commit to something, hey, you did it. You've identified yourself. You've achieved identity. If you don't commit to something, but you're still exploring, you're an identity moratorium. If you don't do anything, if you don't explore different options, try out for the play, try a new sport, whatever, make new friends, something, right? And you're committed regardless of who you are, it's identity foreclosure. You know what? I'm done right here. This is who I am. That's what it's going to be. Or you could do nothing as far as exploring and not commit to anything. And now you're just like kind of floating around doing nothing. You don't know who you are. So, some psychological implications based on identity statuses. If you've achieved identity or if you're in moratorium, again, this is an exploration. You're going to have this information gathering style of existence. You're going to be interested in trying things. You're going to have a higher self-esteem and possibly you're going to feel more in control of your life. If you've gone into foreclosure, not like a house, but identity foreclosure, where you've just said, you know what, high exploration, but I'm, or low exploration, but I'm committed to this. Now the commitment offers you some sort of security or satisfaction. You will then become kind of interdependent in the sense that you will internalize others' values and beliefs, and you depend on others for maintenance of your self esteem, and you fear rejection. Now, if you've done nothing to explore and done nothing to commit to anything, this is the kind of way that you are, you avoid dealing with personal decisions, personal problems. You have time management and academic difficulties, possibly a low self esteem. You're more prone to depression and behavior problems. Stop me if you have any questions or any comments. So, our influences on identity development, our personality, right? How open we are, how conscientious, how extroverted, how agreeable, how neurotic. Again, like I said, child rearing, right? How our parents raise us? What kind of attachment style do we have? Do we have warm and open communication with our caregivers? Our close friends and diverse peers have an influence on our identity. The schools that we attend, the communities, right? What kind of youth athletics, sports, or drama club, or different, different kind of extracurricular things. Having access to supportive mentors and activities. Our culture has an impact on our identity, right? We can have an enduring personal self versus a transforming self. Are we going to, kind of assimilate into the culture? And lastly, societal forces based on, what your social roles are. Identity development among ethnic minority adolescents. A secure ethnic identity is linked to a higher self esteem, more academic motivation, better school performance, and greater resilience to struggles and adaptation. Factors that can pose challenges to having a strong or secure ethnic identity. Acculturative stress, the parents restricting them due to not wanting them to assimilate to the newer culture. They're subject to discrimination and even having biracial parents. Do I identify more with my Asian mother or my African father or my Mexican
Right.
mother or my American, whatever, right? So some factors that support ethnic identity achievement, effective parenting, again, having family ethnic pride, schools supporting the native language and the right to quality education, having the same ethnicity peers, and having a bicultural identity. Kohlberg said that we go through three main stages of moral development. And when we're children, it's pre-conventional. We know what's right or wrong based on what we've been given cookies or spanked for. Then we hit the conventional level, which is about adolescence, late childhood. And now here, what we find is that we know what's right or wrong based on societal rules and expectations. Post-conventional is where we have this universal understanding. I don't care what country you live in. I don't care what part of the county or what state. Everyone should have these universal understandings of right and wrong. Our moral understanding is promoted by actively grappling with moral issues, meaning thinking, look at that cat, thinking about morality. If we have gains in perspective taking, it aids us in making the best moral decisions. Right? If we can consider the other's perspective, the other's point of view. So the pre-conventional stage one and stage two, that's based on punishment and obedience. Stage two, instrumental purpose, meaning you're doing the right thing so you can get something. Conventional level, again, societal expectations, good boy, good girl, morality of interpersonal cooperation, right? And then you idealize reciprocity. I do this for you, you do this for me. Stage four, maintaining social order. Then there's the post conventional, where you view it as a social contract, where you have these universal ethical principles. So, research on Kohlberg's stage sequence, well, moral development is very slow and gradual. We do move through the first four stages in order, but when we get to the fifth and sixth, few people reach even post conventional morality. Remember, in order to do that, we have to really think about moral issues. You have to consider them. That's what college is for, by the way, guys. Stages three and four reflect more morally mature reasoning. In real life, people often reason below their actual capacity. What about sex differences or gender differences? Gilligan said that we emphasized the ethic of care is what we should be emphasizing. Kohlberg does that too, but also puts in place justice. So now we have two aspects of morality: the ethics of care and then the ethics of justice. Females tend to more focus on the ethics of care. Males will be more likely to focus on the ethics of justice, or both. But in all cases, on average, males will stress justice more than females. So the context affects our use of the care orientation, meaning it depends on the situation whether we will or will not make a decision based on what's right or wrong, or decide what's right or wrong based on the ethics of care. It really ultimately comes down to, we think of these things when it's people we care about, these relationships we have with other people. We kind of dismiss whether something's justified or appropriate, right? We go more for, well, it's better for you. So again, influences on moral reasoning, child rearing practices, having a warm, supportive, communicative environment, right? The parents have to encourage pro-social behavior, fairness. Wait, what was this called again? Jerry, these are called spirit fingers. This is jazz hands, and these are called spirit fingers. I don't know what it means, but look it up. All right. If parents engage in moral discussions with their children, even our peer interactions have an impact on our moral reasoning, right? Differing points of view, negotiation, and cooperation between, within, among our peers. Close friendships, right? Having more conversations with those that we are close to. Schooling can have an impact, right? Teaching fairness, supporting social, political, and minority rights. Higher education, that's you. Again, perspective taking. They provide perspective taking opportunities. So even our culture will have an impact on our moral development and reasoning, right? So cultures that value interdependence, they see morality as a communal responsibility. What about moral reasoning and behavior and acting on it? Factors influencing moral behavior: the maturity of moral reasoning, modest relationship, but our emotions, experiencing empathy, sympathy, guilt, that will have an impact on whether we do or do not act morally. Our temperament can have an impact on our behaviors. Our cultural experiences and intuitive beliefs, our moral identity being central to our self concept. That's who we identify ourselves as. If it's a mainstay to who we identify as, we're more likely to behave according to our morals. Again, our parenting practices, right? If they are if they are putting in moral standards in our day-to-day living, and even community service. So going further with community service, the development of civic engagement, right? Volunteering promotes moral maturity and altruism. Altruism means helping another, even if it comes at a cost to yourself. So some influential factors: our family, teaching socially responsive values. Look at that dog. Our school, right? Providing, and community activities. Again, being exposed to potential mentors, making friends, right? Service learning programs. We need more school-based programs for low socioeconomic status and inner city youth. What about religion? Religious involvement and morality. Formal religious involvement declines in adolescence, but we do know that religious involvement is linked to more community service, responsible academic and social behavior, more trusting relationships with family and friends, greater empathy and pro-social behavior, less delinquency, less drug and alcohol use, and delayed sexual activity. I don't care about this. Now, this is where it starts getting interesting, Nicole. You ready? And it should be interesting for all of us, especially Uten, who's
Yeah, sorry, I'm here.
busy with her dog. Mimi, you too. This is going to happen to all of us, right? That have children. They're going to become teenagers, and maybe again, you're going to whatever. You're going to look back maybe and think about the relationship that you had with your parents when you were an adolescent, right? So parent-adolescent relationships. We have these strives, both the parents and the adolescent and their children, for autonomy, right? There's the emotional component, which is to make the child or to see the child as self reliant. And then there's the behavioral component, where you want them to be able to make decisions independently. The adolescents will begin to de idealize parents. They don't see them so much now as like these rock stars, these they know everything, they're flawless. Now they don't see them that way. So, what are some um, examples or some indicators of effective parenting? Where they have warm, supportive ties, right? And then the parents can balance autonomy granting with monitoring. It's not enough just to say, all right, you're 15, you're in charge. You have to monitor them as well. Cultural variations in parent child relationships. Societies that value interdependence, right? The reliance on the other, they see autonomy as self endorsed decision making. It can be challenging for immigrant youth from cultures emphasizing obedience to authority because they deal with acculturated stress. Maybe their parents are critical of them, right? And as a result, they prompt adolescent distancing. Or in most cases, though, they'll maintain a healthy balance between family and new country's values. So once our children hit adolescence, we have to reorganize the relationship that we have. We know that conflict will facilitate psychological distancing, but it also facilitates adolescent identity and autonomy. This is a signal to the parent to adjust their parenting style. They're not a child anymore. They are your child, but they're not a child. They're an adolescent, they're a young adult. So we see that our harmonious interactions begin to increase again by mid to late adolescence. The type, and this is important too, it's not the amount of time that we spend with our children, especially during adolescence, it's the kind of time we spend. It's not about quantity, it's about quality. So, in harsh surroundings, in family homes where there's a lot of abuse or neglect, adolescents will be more accepting of tighter control, right? This um, binding, overwhelming control as a sign, they see it as a sign of them being cared for. Family influences on adolescence adjustment. Family circumstances that affect autonomy granting, financial security. If they're financially secure, then they're more likely to be allowed to do things. If the parents are experiencing a lot of work pressures, then they're going to be less likely. The parental marital happiness or status, right? If there's marital discord, there's more problems with adjustment. What about sibling relationships that are less intense in both positive and negative feelings? The attachment remains strong in most cases, but our culture, we know, also has an influence on the quality of ties that we have with our siblings. So, this is where it starts to get a little more interesting. Characteristics of adolescent friendships. You know what I'm talking about. You know how you went from like 10 friends in grade school to like five in middle school or high school? You have fewer best friends. You start to value that closeness, that intimacy, mutual understanding, and loyalty. Loyalty. The most important source of social support is coming from their friends. Our friends tend to be similar and become more so, right? So our identity status, our educational aspirations, our political beliefs, even the behaviors that are deviant or opposite become more and more similar. We begin to cooperate and to affirm, yes, you're awesome, I'm awesome. Gender differences in friendship quality. Girls, more than boys, like to get together to just talk. They like emotional closeness more than boys. They're more concerned about the communal needs. They're more likely to self disclose and provide support, whereas boys, they like the shared activities like sports and competitive games. They're focused on achievement and status. They're more interested in competition and conflict. So, some friendship risks. So, what are some costs of having friends? Co rumination. This is more common for girls. What does it mean? It means that when your friend is having a bad time, girls are more likely to go, ah. and feel for you. And now they're having a bad time. Your friend's depressed. Now I'm depressed. I've seen my daughter cry, my 15-year-old daughter cry many times because her friends are going through something bad, which could lead to them having her to having anxiety and depression, right? Relational aggression, right? Best friends fight, uh, conflicts between intimate friends. Girls' closest friendships of shorter duration are more likely to have relational aggression. Then there are the masculine stereotypes. These often interfere with friendship closeness among the ethnic minority boys. When it comes to friendships and then, technology, um, it's an important context for our friendship communication and closeness. What is it? Girls like to text, call, use social media sites. Boys play games online. What are the risks and disadvantages? Our ability to interact in person suffers for both girls and boys. The context for expressing jealousies and misunderstandings aren't there. Personal information is accessible to third parties. You post something on Instagram, someone who you don't know sees that, oh, look at so and so lives in Champlain, New York and just got a dog. I wasn't talking to you. Excessive social media use is linked to unsatisfying face to face experiences and impaired mental health. When they asked 16,000 13 to 17-year-olds, they found more often than not it's cell phone texting they do, right? Then it's going to be instant messaging. Then it's going to be social media. Then it's going to be cell phone calling. Then video gaming. Then video chatting. And then email. This is all prior to COVID because we know, first of all, social media sites are through the roof right now. And why is that? Because we don't have the opportunities to strut our stuff in front of our classmates, right? We don't have the opportunity. So what do? We strut our stuff on Facebook, on Instagram. Now, some benefits to adolescent friendships. It provides opportunities to explore ourselves, opportunities to deeply understand others. It's the foundation for our future intimate relationships. It helps us in managing our stressors. We develop greater empathy, sympathy, and prosocial behaviors. And we have improved attitudes toward and involvement in school. Clicks.
Eh,
Clicks. What?
eh.
Yeah, clicks. Not for nothing, Jake the Snake. You and Samantha and Trish, you guys are all in a clique. All you nursing people. Probably Nicole too. You guys are all, what's the word I like to say? Cultish.
We're a cult of nursing students.
Kind of like a cult, honestly, really. In a benefiting one, it's not like all cults are bad. Actually, I think all cults might be bad. But anyway, cliques, small, tightly knit groups between 5 and 7 individuals. They're similar in their family background, their attitudes, their values, and this is more important to girls versus a crowd, which is larger and is composed of several cliques. Now, our membership is based on our reputation and stereotypes. So you're in a crowd, right? You got all of your best friends in your clique. Some of your best friends, they might be smarty pants. Some might be, very athletic. Some might be very popular. Some might be kind of, on the deviant end. But we have all those differences within our groups. But we begin to associate and make these affiliations that reflect our abilities and interests within the crowds. There's the brains, there's the jocks, there's the populars, the nonconformists. Or we may express our ethnicity. Dating. Mixed sex cliques prepare teenagers for dating. Cultural expectations determine when dating begins. Like, in Latin American cultures, the quinceanera, right? For girls. Dating goals change with age. During early adolescence, it's for fun, right? And everybody else has got a girlfriend, everybody else has got a boyfriend. I'm going to do it too. It's for peer status. During late adolescence, it's for intimacy, compatibility, social support. So, some factors that influence our dating relationships: the relationships that we have with our parents, secure, insecure; the relationship we have with our friends, secure, insecure. Again, there's that security of attachment that we have. our parents' marital interactions and their conflict resolution styles. So, how our parents appear to us, are they happy? Well, that has an impact on who we choose to be with and how we live romantically. So, they asked 12 to 18-year-olds, the last 18 months, have you been romantically involved with someone? And you can see that it rises as we age. It's almost a perfectly straight line for girls and young ladies. Whereas boys, it goes up, then it kind of dips, then it goes up again. There's this 15, 16-year-old. Maybe that's due to being awkward. I don't know. But dating challenges. Ooh, what happens if we date too early? What's it linked to? Drugs, sex, delinquency, poor academic achievement, and dating violence. For gay and lesbian youths, initiating and maintaining visible romances. That's a challenge. Trying to find partners who have already come out too. That's another challenge. And if neither one of those things happens, often what is the case is they will engage in a heterosexual relationship because that's the norm in their eyes. They can't find anybody else. Questions? Depression in adolescence. No questions? Okay. It's the most common psychological problem. 15 to 20% have had one or more major episodes. Pay attention here. Twice as many girls as boys. The difference that we see as adolescents is sustained throughout the rest of the girl's life. The majority don't receive treatment. Why? Because adults often minimize it and say, it's just a phase. This is where it begins, ladies and gentlemen. So, factors related to adolescent depression are genes, hormone changes, estrogens in the girls, gender typed coping styles, and greater co rumination. Again, for the girls, the gender typed coping styles. What do they tell a girl when she's sad? Smile. Genetic risk factors combined with other, or are they combined with other risk factors like drug and alcohol use, parental depression. What's associated? Maladaptive parenting. So the parents are depressed, they're not parenting well, that messes the kid up. There you go. Learned helplessness as a result of negative life events. Right? You try something, you fail. You try something, you fail. You try something, you fail. What do? You stop trying. Adolescent suicide. Suicide rates jump sharply at adolescence. What are some related factors? Boys, they're more at risk. Based on a lot of it is due to gender role expectations. Ethnicity, we see an increase in African American boys, but we've always seen it high in Native American youths. Our family, that's my dog wagging its ears. The family environment, if it's high life stress, if there's an impoverished home, sexual orientation, our personality tends to be linked to intelligent individuals, withdrawn individuals, individuals who don't think they can meet their own or others' standards of expectations, individuals also who may be hostile, antisocial, or destructive, or just having negative life events. Preventing and responding to suicide. What can we do to prevent? We can avoid, sorry, we can attend to warning signs. We need to train adults to recognize them, provide adult and peer support, promote telephone hotlines. The schools and communities, they need to strengthen cultural connections. They need to remove access to the means by gun control legislation. We need to learn to stay with suicidal individuals until professional help arrives. If you're not physically with them, stay on the phone, stay in the chat. Treatments come in the form of medication or different forms of therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy. Post suicide, now what do we do when someone's actually committed suicide? We need to provide support. We need to monitor their family. We need to monitor their friends. Delinquency. This rises over adolescence, but then it declines more often than not in the early 20s. Here we go with the related factors. The boys, again, more likely to commit violent crimes. It's linked to socioeconomic status, ethnicity, having a difficult temper, low intelligence, poor school performance, being rejected by your peers, association with other peers who are antisocial. If the parents are inept, harsh, or inconsistent, if mom got a new husband, if dad got a new wife, if there's no supervision by the parents. And again, we see it higher in poverty stricken neighborhoods and also where there are poor quality schools. The two routes to adolescent delinquency, there's the early onset where the behavior begins in childhood. There are biological risks and inept parenting that combine. This is mostly seen in boys, and it's also linked to serious antisocial activity. Late onset begins around puberty. Most of it, the time, it's influenced by their peers. And later on, most will abandon these antisocial behaviors. But serious offenses can close off opportunities and perpetuate a life of crime. So if a kid does something, an adolescent does something bad and gets put in juvie or something, that can lead to a lifelong pattern of crime. So the path to chronic delinquency for adolescents with childhood onset and antisocial behavior. So it starts in this case with early childhood. They may have a difficult temperament, cognitive deficits, ADHD. That leads to conflict-ridden home, where the parents are lax and or they're inconsistent in discipline. That leads to child conduct problems like hostility, defiance, persistent aggression, which could then lead to rejection by their peers or academic failure, which then leads to this commitment to deviant peers who are deviant. Then that ultimately will the peer influence will lead to delinquency and adolescence. So it's all these different things, these different points. And the reason why they bring this up, there are all these different points for intervention. So how do we prevent adolescent delinquency? Start early. Intervene on multiple levels. We know that zero tolerance policies are ineffective, so don't be like an all or none rule, right? So effective interventions are to train parents and to provide youth skill building experiences, train in parental communication, parental monitoring, parental discipline strategies. These youth experiences, right, the skill building experiences to improve their cognitive, social, and emotional self-regulation skills. We could provide multi-systemic therapy, which combines family intervention with positive school, work, and leisure activities. So in school, at home, out of school. Does anyone have any questions before I stop recording?